This one is.
We've got it.
Okay. All right. We're going to start. The choice semester. Whoa. It's making all sorts of interesting noises. So the choice semester is also the exercise semester, so you're getting to see different parts of campus and understand different rooms and maybe appreciate our building a little bit more, actually. So thank you. And I think that might be because I have my phone in my... See if that helps. Thanks. We'll see if that corrects it. So I actually probably don't even need it in this room. Anyway, thank you and welcome to the second of our Choice Lecture Series this fall. The series continues in November with Lucia Ale speaking on November 5th, and we think that'll be in Herring Hall. Stay tuned. It may be in our building, we don't know. And Winnie Ma speaking on the 11th of November. Meanwhile, let me also remind you... Let me also remind you that the Near Future series, it might be because of the two microphones, but yeah, thanks. The Near Future series, curated by Sam Stewart Hallaby, concludes next Wednesday evening with Liam Young and Agnesinci Courant. That's also mispronounced, I'm sure. So one of the readings that we had in preparation for Martin's visit to Rice was an interview that he conducted a few years ago, which was called Fake Realities. And in it, Martin laments that the English landscape garden can't be perceived today with the impact that it really should still have. He writes, "Their actual artificiality, their philanthropic imitation of naturalness, must have been much more apparent, much more palpable at the time of their creation. This palpability," he concludes, "is what differentiates intelligent faking from unthinking imitation." So needless to say, this line really caught the seminar's attention. We're all keen on getting a lesson from Martin in the art of discerning as well as optimizing intelligent faking from unthinking imitation. This is but one choice that pertains to all designers, obviously, but most particularly to landscape architects who work with natural and artificial environments at the same time, surfaces, materials, full environments. Other choices that are particularly acute in the landscape field include those of boundaries, which can often be much more fluid than those of architects, or those that architects deal with, and the choice of collaboration, which also occurs in all design fields, but especially in landscape architecture, where there's often a collaboration with artists, architects, writers, and others, and certainly something that you see in Topotech's work. Martin Rein-Cano studied art history at Frankfurt University and landscape architecture at the technical universities of Hanover and Karlsruhe. He trained in the office of Peter Walker and Martha Schwartz in San Francisco, and has worked with the office of Gabi Kiefer in Berlin. In 1996, he founded the Topotech One office in Berlin. Topotech One has garnered a number of important awards, including the gold medal from the International Olympic Committee for the Superkillen project in Copenhagen. Why the Olympic Committee was awarding a gold medal for that project is a mystery to me, but maybe we'll learn. In addition to practicing, Martin has taught at a number of universities across the world. He's currently a design critic in landscape architecture at Harvard University's Graduate School of Design. So I've never met Martin before today, but I would say after our discussion this afternoon with the students, I'm pretty sure that we don't have an unthinking imitation of Martin Rein-Cano here today, but the real thing. I look forward to some intelligence as well as some intelligent faking. Please welcome, without fakery, Martin Rein-Cano.
Yeah. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation, Sarah, and for the very nice introduction. I also enjoyed the afternoon with you. I think it's very nice to be in a place where before coming here, actually the students and also the dean and the department is taking care of the work to be presented. So it's a really interesting and new situation. Usually you get to go somewhere where people don't have a clue what you do. What makes maybe my surprise not as surprising and my fake not as faked, whatever. So the question, the title, what was interesting, that in this misunderstanding when you travel and work in different places in different languages, it comes always to mistakes in transmitting information. That's the only thing that will save us from media, is the mistakes that will happen, this kind of misunderstanding. So the one that I saw here today is that the title got from personal public space into personal and public space, because maybe someone thought that I'm foreign and can't do it right, but it's personal public space without an end. And it has to do with something that we discussed today with students, and that the first motivation to do whatever we do, when we have a choice to do what we study, and also when we have a choice to do different things, is a personal motivation. So your personal biography is kind of the first part, and it's not something that is finished. It's not something that is God-given and then you have to take it the way it is. It is something that you not can completely change, but you can cultivate in different ways. And this kind of cultivation of your person, of your difficulties, actually cultivating not what is good in you, that's easy, but cultivating what doesn't work really well in you, and how to get this what doesn't work really well in you, these desires that don't get fulfilled, how to get these issues to be actually the driving force of working with design. As design in the end is something that is a personal approach more than anything. Nevertheless, obviously we are not artists, so we have the public, we have something that we are confronted with. We have a client, we have the public opinion, we have people, users. We have to justify what we do, and so the public is the second part that makes us somehow to do things that obviously can't just be personal in the sense to say I do it because I like it like that, but we have to engage and to work together with others, with other disciplines, and also with people all of sorts. And that makes our art never being able to be autistic like many other art forms, in which autism can be a very helpful. Stubbornness in the end can be a very helpful strategy. So as Sarah was introducing me, I am a landscape architect. I studied landscape architecture all the way through, and probably most of you are architects, so I thought it would be good to give a little bit of an introduction to my profession before I show you one project that we did, and maybe another issue as well. And well, to start to really do a tour de force through the profession. Our profession starts with paradise, and you know, architects are very narcissistic people, and the only way to confront them, you have to actually, as I said, you have to cultivate your narcissism, because it's in the end a unfulfilled desire that is always behind it. But we have to learn from that as landscape architects too. So when I discuss sometimes with architects about who is more important in teams and in collaborations, I like to talk to them about who was the first architect and who was the first landscape architect, you know. And so when it comes to that, the architects say, well, I think Michelangelo was the first really well-known architect. Isn't there anyone before that? Then they say Vitruve, but Vitruve obviously was just a writer. And then when they get really nervous and they ask me, so who was the first landscape architect? I say, yeah, God. Yeah. So be careful. If you misbehave in this team or whatever, we send you some lightning or whatever. So he's a colleague of ours. But that shows also the biggest difference maybe between our disciplines. Our origin has a religious connotation or a religious motivation. And it happens in almost all cultures around the world, this kind of ideal space that is not nature and not culture, but it's this kind of tamed nature, this perfected nature for us. And it's this place that is never too cold, never too warm. It's really perfect. It's almost like the valley of your mother. It's this place that you even don't remember because it was so perfect. You're never hungry. You're never thirsty. It was perfect. So no memory about that. And that kind of idea is the place we would like to go back to. And it resembles actually. And it's not a house. This place, but it's a garden. It's a place that plays with that. So in the end, all projects that are related with this, with landscape architecture, have a little bit of this kind of dream of a better world, of something that we want to have have back, and can obviously be in different cultures, in different landscapes, different things. In German, for example, the word space is related with trees. You know, Baum, with is tree in German, and Raum are actually etymologically related. And because our country was full of trees, so to create a space, you would have to take out trees. So Räumen, making spaces, means taking away something because it was full of trees. So obviously our garden, our paradise would be a clearance in the forest, but it would be different in Kuwait or somewhere else where you maybe would have an oasis or something else. So creating these kind of spaces can be very, very different. So as we are not God, and we have more limited possibilities to develop this kind of paradises, one of the things we have been working with since the profession exists is scale. Scale in a very different way, like architecture. When we speak about architecture, you probably heard the term of human scale, something that feels good related to the size of your body and of your mind as well. What we do actually has to be always a little bit out of scale to be really interesting. So we tend to do things too big or too small to create this kind of out of space sensation. This being somewhere else sensation is created by a game with these things. If you think of the bonsai gardens in Japan, for example, this is probably the most clear example. So the most influential garden style till today is the English landscape garden, the romantic style, being recreated and copied since in many different ways, and becoming actually almost an archetype of what people think of a park or of a garden. This kind of lawn, some features, some folies, long views, whatever. This kind of set. Especially also the lawn. I was walking today in a suburb here in Houston, and it was like these perfect lawns, you know. And this is in the end part of the story of the English landscape garden. And so I hated this garden style because I always thought it's actually stupid fake, you know. It's like trying to be something that it is not. That I want the real truth, and so on. And I also hated it because it got it overwhelmed the whole world with its special strategy or beauty. And on the other side, I thought, thinking more closely about it, that there are strategically a lot of very interesting points in this garden style. One of them being maybe dynamism. The idea that this maybe the English landscape garden is the first piece of art or the first designed space that only worked in motion. So you would have to walk through the space to realize the whole thing, to realize, actually, one could say that the English landscape garden was almost a predecessor of movies, of films. You would walk through the movie instead of the movie running in front of you. And in difference to the movie, you would be part of the movie as much as you would be playing, you would be playing a part of the movie as much as you were consuming the movie, actually. And it would be a real 3D experience that would not only involve a visual experience, but you would smell something, you would feel something on your skin, you could even put something in your mouth. So it's a complete body experience. But this would count probably for every garden in general, but the difference is really that this space you only can experience walking through it. You know, the English landscape garden had a path, a circular path, it would be called belt walk. So that you would have to walk around all these belts to get the whole thing. And another term that is interesting in that context is the term of picturesque. So these gardens were done after pictures. So the reality of pictures was there before the reality of the reality was made. So the idea of faking out of pictures, something that for us seems also very modern or very, very actual, very something of today, was maybe firstly done in this time. And this dynamism was not only moving from one picture to the other, but it was also the dynamism of nature was exaggerated. So everything was kind of tuned louder. It was like a hyper nature. So it was autumn. It was more autumn than regularly. And it was spring. It was flowering more, etc. And obviously, to create this sensation, gardens are also always places of other realities. So the idea that a garden is always a foreigner where it is. It's something out of the general. And so to create this sensation, they also mixed in a very eclectic way, depending on their tastes, on their experiences of what they wanted to show, different styles, copying Greek temples, for example. But the interesting thing is that these Greek temples actually were not transported from Greece and rebuilt here. They were copied from pictures, so they were actually also out of scale. And so, and the other interesting thing, the other contradiction regarding these gardens is that that being actually foreign, being actually recreating what they would call an Elysian landscape, a landscape of the Mediterranean, they became the English landscape gardens. So they actually, being completely foreign, they became nevertheless called English. So these kind of contradictions will be important later when it comes to the project I'm going to show to you. These are the original pictures that created this desire. So the pictures created the desire to have someone wanting to have a space like the pictures be built. And this kind of change in the linearity of things. You know, normally you have the object and you have the abstraction after the object. In that case, we have the abstraction first, and then you have the object. This kind of change, this kind of shift of causality is actually pretty new in that space. And the last, and also maybe very common to our days, the last important connotation is that the English landscape garden developed something very important and very new. You know, garden etymologically comes from guard. It means that you have to close a space to create it, to have a wall actually around it. The English landscape garden dissolves the wall and creates an endlessness, a borderless, an openness that is as radical as you would think of buildings that wouldn't need roofs. Or as radical, as I said before in the meeting with the students, is actually our Bauhaus. This idea of dissolving the walls was 300 years before that. And also that, I would say, something that was, this idea of dissolving borders was very, very influential till our days. As you can see, like in these pictures, you would create this kind of collage. You would take some Swiss mountain, something from Rome, you know, and some other landscape, and you would put all that together and create the atmosphere that you wanted. So, and because gardens also always been these kind of spaces. You want to come in? It's my brother who's late, obviously. So you actually, with gardens, you can create your own history. You can create your own tradition. So tradition, because when you have roots, it seems that you belong to a place. So this is what you do as a landscape architect, is providing tradition, providing history for someone that actually is looking to look historical. So the big garden styles, the Baroque or the English landscape garden, always happened also around big changes in social context. So the French king wanted to show his possibilities of dominating and rationalizing space, or even these guys who did the English landscape gardens that made actually their money mostly with slave trade and wanted to show their fortune and needed to, because they were small novelty and they wanted to show that they are more than they actually are. Then when it comes to gardens, and I think the strategies of creating traditions is as a strategy something that can be very, very helpful and very interesting. So to create this idea of a mediatic space almost, this idea that an English landscape garden is almost like a movie, they use what they call the Claude glass. One of the painters I showed you was Claude Laurent. And so to create this, and, you know, as much as a garden needs a wall to become a garden, a picture needs a frame to become a picture. So to catch the picture that was copied of a picture, the fake picture that became real, they would use this mirror and would sit down somewhere and say, oh, this is the best view actually. And then they would enjoy actually not the reality that would be actually behind them, but actually would be looking into the mirror. So actually, if you think of it, it's like, and not only that, you could also use it in a filmic way. You could walk with this mirror and have the future in front of you, the presence where you would be standing, and the past behind you. So you would be in a kind of space-time continuity that is incredibly unique and very, very first, if you think when these gardens were done. And if you want to follow my idea of how important our profession and how much more important our profession is than architecture, you also can say that the iPhone was invented by landscape architects, as this Claude has been the first iPhone, if you want. He has this kind of reality framer, creating actually the movie that you actually want out of the reality. Yeah. So all these issues are kind of interesting and show how many strategies they lay in this history. So the idea that the picture was first and the reality was after, and that fiction and reality get more and more close, is something that we are also getting more and more used. And where the narrative starts is always unclear. Mostly it is like an artist, for example, in the case of the Rocky Mountains, without the pictures of Ansel Adams, probably no one would be interested in the Rocky Mountains. The same for New Zealand. Who would go to New Zealand without Lord of the Rings? So in the end, not only you can invent tradition, you can actually misuse. I mean, a film crew decided to use a space in New Zealand to do this movie, and because they never destroyed it, people start to go to New Zealand to visit it, and it recreated a kind of a mythology that actually never existed, but it fits quite well and can be kind of rearranged. And it's not only this reality that was the film reality, but also the Air New Zealand, who is now the official airline of Middle Earth. So we can see how reality and fiction works more and more together. We never exactly know what is real fake and what is fake reality. So this Rocky, you all know, this guy that because he trained hard and worked hard, is a retelling of the American dream. The idea that you can, if you work hard again and you fight and whatever, you can become something. And it was very crucial for a whole generation, this movie. So it plays in Philadelphia. And actually, this where he does his running. This is the stairs that go up to the art museum there. And Philadelphia, as you all know, as being the first capital of the United States, is a quite visited place. And so when people go here, they not only go to visit this museum and the Bell of Liberty, but there is also a statue of Rocky, a guy that actually never existed, being actually a rather bad Italo-American actor, so we commemorate actually and remember someone that actually never existed, and fiction becomes reality as much as reality becomes fiction. And this kind of twist between the two are more and more part of our culture. And we can say also, regarding the idea of movement, that we can say that the whole world is an English landscape park as far as you can drive or walk through it. So the only difference to the English landscape park is the music and the velocity. So, and we actually, when we want to play our own movie, we just put the music on that we need to recreate this being ourselves in this kind of motion or moving world, so that even a boring landscape like this desert can suddenly become a visitable or interesting place to be if you have the right music, the right velocity, and the right vehicle to actually enjoy it. So that, and these are all ideas that actually are being initiated in the English landscape park. Also the Nazi movement was a deeply romantic movement, and also it wanted to dissolve borders in a rather vicious way. And they started to actually doing the highways. And what is interesting that these highways were not set up to just meet engineered requirements. And in America, actually, they are called parkways. So the idea that you use these highways or parkways to walk through the space as you would be walking through a landscape park. And these highways were not set up in the landscape in an engineered way, but in a beautiful way. So there were landscape architects that actually looked at the views you would have driving through this space would be the right views, and would create as much of a movie, of a sequence of pictures as it would create when you would walk through a landscape park. And even the planting would be kind of the cuts in the movie, where one picture would come after the other, would be set in a way that it would recreate this kind of experience. And if you want, also the American suburb is a child of this illusion of borders, that you don't have to have borders, because we are all good. We all obviously know that you shouldn't put a foot over this thing because they have weapons here and will kill you probably if you trespass this law. So this dissolution of borders, obviously, it's a kind of a fake dissolution, and it's obviously only half truth. And but it also resembles this idea that we want to live in a world actually in which there is no borders and we can all flow together and be one. So, but the idea that you can walk through the landscape as you would, that you can use the car as you could be walking in a landscape, obviously doesn't work since the highways are so full that it's actually almost driving in a train, because you have actually always the same neighbor next to you, for many hours. So this idea of freedom and liberty, actually, where so many people want to have this borderless, actually maybe doesn't work as well anymore. And so another big shift that might be problematic or interesting, depending from which standpoint you look at it, is the dissolution of the private and the public. The idea that there is public space and private space in a clear division is not anymore given as it was, as the private space, the walls that were supposed to protect us do not protect us anymore, since media actually intrudes our spaces, and we are not protected actually from, or our privacy is not protected anymore, like the curtain would have done, or the wall would have done. So if we don't have the protection inside our homes or our buildings, we also can actually go out and have this kind of privacy actually in the public space. So the public space, what is maybe a danger for the privacy and the private space, might be a chance for the public space, because the public space gets this kind of privatization. So what is interesting, that privacy in that case, if you look at that picture, 1968, is actually created by the television. So it's actually the screen that creates privacy. So it's not the wall that creates privacy, it's just the screen that gives you the sensation of being sucked into another reality that is so attractive that you actually forget that you are sitting on a lawn in Central Park. And if you look at people, how they use their devices, it's actually quite similar. So we feel actually more at home, especially when we're moving through the space, if we just look into this thing, or we have to touch it also every 5 minutes to feel safe and see that we are still connected to whatever our mothership is. So these kind of developments are interesting and crucial for this I think for the development how we think of space, and especially for the project that I am going to present you now. What was for me important, and I was asked that today too, what is for me important is to show that there is a whole lot of things to be discovered in the history of landscape architecture that also can be very useful for strategies of architecture. So in the case of the project I'm going to show you today, so one aspect is the idea of translating or transporting one reality into another place. As much as the English wanted to have a warm Mediterranean landscape, we always want to have something we do not have. And this is what gardens, what spaces related to landscape architecture actually were meant to be. So the second issue with this project is, and this is the issue of the context. I think the context is a very important thing when it comes to make these places, because you have to understand what is needed in being able to create exactly this kind of opposite, or using these strategies of landscape architecture. You have to understand out of what mass you are actually working. And in that case, it's more or less the social context was more or less the most important context, more important maybe than the physical condition of this site. And thinking of the history of the European history, another development in the dissolution of borders has to do with emancipation. So the European history also has been a history of emancipation. So we also had slavery in the Middle Age that was abolished. We had obviously the emancipation of the proletarians with many revolutions. We had the emancipation of women. We even have the emancipation of children. So the idea that every group had a chance to, with more or less violence, to create or to recreate its rights is part of the success story or also of the devastating story of Europe. So the question is only, emancipation always happens. The question is how much violence is going to be involved in this emancipation. So how generous are we when it comes to give certain groups the rights they actually deserve? I have to explain maybe something else that is crucial. We have worldwide important movements when it comes to immigration. Obviously, the United States is the most attractive place when it comes to immigration. But maybe for you, surprisingly, last year the second most attractive place was Germany, having a netto 1 million immigrants, mostly from Europe, but being actually second in that range. Europe doesn't have the history of migration as the United States have, as this kind of melting pot idea of being the base of the whole state. Europe defines itself more through the idea that every country should have one language, if possible one religion, and being a more homogeneous structure. So, but immigration, on the other side, the European societies are aging and they need new people to immigrate to these countries, but don't offer these people possibilities maybe like America would be, the easy way of adapting, the easy way, the comfortable way of getting around. But in the end, it actually reacts differently. It reacts with repression. It's because, as we all know, everyone is a racist. Everyone is scared of the different. And so, for example, in France, the burqa is forbidden. You know, this beautiful dress, but obviously it's not forbidden for a guy to run with a dress if he's a priest. Yeah. So there is this kind of differences that we make when it comes to these immigrants. Or in Switzerland, actually, with urban design argumentation. They forbid, actually with an election, you know, Switzerland is supposed to be this hyper-democratic place, so they did this election to forbid the minarets. So it's forbidden to build minarets in the cores of the urban structures. And if you look at the picture, the minarets actually look like rockets, and the woman looks really dangerous. So actually arguing that the minarets don't fit with the landscape of Switzerland and with the beautiful church towers, etc. So the idea for Superkind, for this park that we were doing in Copenhagen, you know, the neighborhood in which we were working has 100 different nationalities, and the idea was, you know, when you immigrate to a place, when you go from one country to another, first of all, in many cases you have to learn a new language, and learning a new language means that you also are starting to relearn your original language. You start to translate, and so translating things. You start to change the way you think, because you have to rethink many things. You have to, things that were funny in your culture might be too serious in the other one, etc. There are many things that you have to overthink, and many values also that you have to think through when it comes to that. But so that you start to, your mind starts to change. But not only your mind starts to change, also your physiognomy starts to change, because when the language that you mostly speak also needs different muscles in your face. So the reason Americans have these potato faces is because they speak mostly with this part of the face, and in Germany we speak more in the back, so that we look more serious and stiff. And however, what I want to say with this, or the French, actually, the French is the best. I hope there's no French in the room, but you know that the French actually fart when they speak. You know, they make like, and that's one of the reasons they actually have this beautiful face. So independently of your origin, of your race, in the end, you transform not only mentally but also in the body language you speak, and even in the physiognomy that you develop out of the culture and the language that you speak. Having said that, when you move from one place to the other, the things that you leave behind is actually this Grundrauschen of reality, this idea that there is this common things that you don't question. You know, when you live in a place, there are the things that surround you, and it's food, it's objects, it's buildings, language, is everything that surrounds you seems to you familiar and common, so that you can just navigate through it even without thinking about it. When you come to a new place, it's like learning to swim, it's like being in another element. And the strange thing is that the European traditions or the European laws actually forbid or do not like when the people start not only to bring their workforce with them, but also start to bring their identity and their desires and also their space desires with them. So they have to leave their minarets and their burqas actually behind, and so to become, actually, you know, in Denmark where this project is set, they speak of these immigrants as the new Danes, just not to call them foreigners. So this is the way to deal with that. But obviously, they are not new Danes, they are just something else. They are a mix of many things, and among them maybe also Danish. So the idea for this project was to allow exactly these objects of identity, of everyday identity, to transport them into this space. And actually, like in the English landscape garden, in which also many trees, especially from America, were brought to England. And in those days, these trees also were recognizable because you would see that they are foreign. Nowadays, because the trees got spread everywhere, you actually do not know exactly where they are from. But in the days when the English landscape garden was done, you would see the difference. So that's what Sarah was saying in the introduction, that the English landscape park, actually, for us now, it's part of this banality of every day. But in the days when it was done, it must have been quite shocking to suddenly see this, you know, in the middle of England, full of sheep, shitting and smelling, and then you would have a beautiful temple suddenly in the middle of nowhere, and a nice American oak being incredibly red, much redder than the European oak, etc. So you would really see the difference. So the idea was, what do you have to do today to recreate the sensation that you are having a place of another place? And so this is the connection to the history of the garden. And on the other side, how you would give the people from these different cultures that live in this neighborhood the possibility to a certain extent recreate or provide objects of their culture for this space. But what is important is these objects, because even if you face changes and you get thick lips and potato face, you still obviously are what you were before as well. So you are as much a potato as you are a fart face if you are French and American. Yeah. So in the end, what I want to say is that this kind of hybrid, this kind of mix between things, is also what the English landscape park is. It is English because it's English stones, but on the other side it works with typologies and archetypes of different cultures. And this idea that also migration is about, that you are as much what you were, as much as you become something else, and maybe another term from landscape architecture, from gardening, so you become a kind of a hybrid with different possibilities. So in the end, what we did. So this is the area where we are working. Here, this is the area where we're working. It's a formal, as you can see, it's a whole green ring. It goes around the city. We have been working in that area here. It used to be built for a tram. The trams were taken out in Copenhagen in the 60s. So these spaces are already open spaces, part of them green. And the idea, so we created this kind of three different spaces, a red square, a black square, and a green park. And the idea was that all the objects in this park, regardless of if it's a tree, if it's a play object, if it's a garbage bin, a lamp, even advertisement, you know, one thing that is really interesting, even if places get more and more equalized or different countries get more and more similar, advertisements still can be very different. And when you travel, I don't know if you had this experience, in your own country you immunize yourself against advertisement because you know that they want your money. But when you're in a foreign country, it starts to be interesting to look at these pictures because they just become interesting graphics or whatever of products that you don't know. Even in languages you can write if it's some Arabic or Chinese or whatever. So we have this kind of objects. So the difference to the English park is that instead of being this kind of Elysian objects, these temple-like objects, we actually said we want a park of everyday objects, of different cultures. And another issue that was important here. So this is from Iraq, this is from England, This is from Brazil. This is the most beautiful telephone booth. This is from America, yeah. And so we didn't build that one. You will see we have a better one from America now. And this was the model that we did. One issue that was really important for this project is Scandinavia is famous for participation. And the usual way of doing participation is that you have these endless talking sessions where people discuss things, and it can be rather boring and unnerving. And the problem in that case was that because the 99% of the population of this neighborhood are actually foreign, many of them wouldn't speak the language, but also they wouldn't have the education to participate, because you have to know what to say if you want to participate. So that in the end, the first participation circles we had, only the West Danish population, the 3 last Danish girls, yeah, who lived in this neighborhood would show up, and the imam would maybe show up, and she adopted these 2, so they don't count. Yeah? So they are all Danish, yeah. And so we said, discussing with the city, we said, how should we deal with this? How can we get the people really to participate in this process? And so the idea was actually to set up. We started setting up an internet page in which the people could propose objects from their cultures to be built or copied into the space. That actually also didn't work very well, because also again, these people also don't have the time to participate. Because participate can also be kind of, you do that when you have time to spend. So these people have to make money. They have problems. They have to adapt. They have to learn how to get into this new culture, etc. So that in the end we said, so we still had this setup of the internet homepage where people could put things in, but we also went to the people with a group of 5 translators from door to door. We knock on the door and told the people, don't you have something, an object that you would like to have in the space? And the idea behind that is also an idea that comes from our very own experience, that in the end, the best sensation that we have when we build things is actually when we get things, when they finally get done, when you have just an idea, and that idea that you had actually gets built. And so, but with the people, we don't share this kind of experience with the people. We share actually the bad part of the project. I like the analogy. I hope this is not too obscene. It's like when you think of babies. So babies start actually with sex, yeah. And if you get pregnant, well, you're pregnant, yeah. And then so the sex part is maybe fun. Being pregnant is a lot of, I've never been pregnant, but I've seen it, so it's really kind of hard work. And then you have the labor, and the labor is really like butchery, it's like screaming and blood, and it's disgusting. But afterwards the baby is there and everything, how cute is it, my goodness, yeah. And all the pain is forgiven. So the project is similar, so we have the competition would be the sex. So if the sex worked out well, you're pregnant, yeah, and you have a project, yeah, and then you have to you have to go through being pregnant is going through all this permit process. You have to talk to talk again and back and forth, and it's this process of, and then you labor. This is the construction site, I would say. So it's disgusting, dirty, yeah, etc. And then the project is finished and everything's how cute is it? It's lovely. So where do we let the people participate? So we don't have sex with them. Yeah, that we do. It's probably not politically correct. And the baby afterwards is our baby, my baby. I don't share that with you. I'm the author. So we share actually the pregnancy with them, and maybe a little bit of the labor. So actually the most boring and the most, let's say, unsexy part of the whole process is what we share with them. So we should share with them what we also enjoy most. As I said, it was sex, it was the objects. So that they should also have the experience of having an object of their own that they propose, something built onto the space. So this would be kind of a very direct way of participation, instead of having this kind of endless discussion that in the end don't lead to any kind of different project in the end, also in my opinion. Because also in the end they seem to be democratic. I said let the people participate, but people who participate are not always the people who actually afterwards are also going to use the space. So there's a lot of contradictions around that. And as I said, some of the projects were proposed through internet, and some of the projects were proposed through knocking on the door. So this is one of the projects we got out of knocking on the door. One of the objects we went to. We knocked on the door. There was a guy, half dressed, and he said, "Leave me alone, I don't have time." You know, the person was running. I said, "Oh, we had this group of really interesting people, and would like to involve you in this very interesting project." And he said, "Leave me alone." We knocked again, and he said, "You know, we're looking. Don't you have one object that you would really like to have on the square here next door to you?" And he said, "Okay, you know, my uncle actually, he's a dentist, and he paid for me to come here to Denmark. So here, this is a sign of his dentist space in Muscat." So we actually took that and copied that, or copy-pasted that actually also out of scale, so that it's actually different. And it became, what is interesting, if you look at the object before was really this kind of, probably soon falling apart object. And now we suddenly have, as much as it is symbolically Islamic sign, it's design-wise a Nordic object, because it's clean, it's pure, and has this kind of lightness that we are used to see when it comes to Nordic culture. So it's like an immigrant, it's in the same time Nordic as it is Islamic, and obviously it has a little bit of humor because there is a tooth in it instead of a star. So these were the working drawings, the making of the objects. Yeah, this is the American object we have chosen. So, and this is also this idea that borders the soul. So the question is this a very bad French car maker? Yeah? Or is it also part of the art project that we do? Can you buy donuts here somewhere? You know? So this idea that there is a kind of reality shift, that there isn't clear what is reality, what can you buy, what is just fake, and where does the part, the idea of the English part, that not having a border, actually reappears here. And then it's also maybe interesting because these objects were done in Northern Europe, so probably there will be, when you Americans in 100 years want to see a donut sign, you will have to go probably to Denmark, because yours have been falling apart till then, and this one is very, very well done, so it will exist here. So the other story of an advertisement object is the bull in Andalusia. You know, it used to be an advertisement for brandy, yeah. And actually, the brandy firm didn't want to have it anymore, so they took it down from the hills of Andalusia. But when the Dutch and the Swedes and the Germans were getting down to South Spain on vacation, and the bull was gone, it was a disaster because it wasn't Spain, so they kept on going, you know, and they got all lost. So the bull got so much a symbol of the landscape that then, with a lot of requests, the Spanish state actually made it a historical or cultural heritage, putting it on these mountains again without being any more an advertisement for a product. So these kinds of changes that objects of desires or objects of advertisement can actually be as much symbolic as they can be emotional, or they can be as emotional and symbolic as much as they can just be attracting consumerism. So these are some objects from China. So this is a typical situation in Copenhagen. You can see here, this is 11 in the morning. This is the last Dane, Öl. Yeah? This is an immigrant from Ethiopia. You know that the Danish have the biggest prams. In Germany we have the biggest cars, but the Danes have the biggest prams. But you have big cars here too. You have bigger cars actually. So, but you know, normally the Danes have one fat white baby in it. She has 4. So this is the demographic development of this area. These bonnets are from Ghana. Yeah. Another thing that, thinking of dissolving borders and thinking of collaboration between architects and landscape architects, you know, sometimes when the collaborations are conflictive or not cooperative but competing, let's say, you know, it can happen that the architects say, oh, you know, the space in front of the building is actually my space. So I do the building and I do the square, and you can do some planting somewhere further away. Yeah? And so, oh, I say, interesting. I would have seen it the other way around. I said, you know, for me, I am, as a landscape architect, I do everything that is outside. So I would say the facade and the square, and all the space is mine. Yeah? So obviously it never worked, but in this project, where we actually did this wall, climbing up the spacing and playing actually with this issue of second and third dimension. It was the opening of the square. That's how the inhabitants are starting to adapt to our color concept, what makes us very happy. This is, as I said before, this is from Iraq. This object is from Ukraine. There was a lady from Ukraine who proposed it. And that's what happened when we translated into a Nordic design. There is obviously also like the cloth mirror, the cloth glass that I showed you before. There is also an app, so you can, if you like to be informed, you can. There is an app that you can use to get the story behind this object, who proposed it, where it's from. But actually, there is no signage on the square itself, so you have to use a telephone to do that as a mix of these two worlds. These are the different areas with the different objects. Even the sewage covers are actually foreign. So when you walk around and you are daydreaming, sometimes just like you have, for example, you always have this concrete sidewalks. So these kind of things that happen everywhere that immediately get you back where you are, or sewage covers or bollards, these things of every day actually give you the context of where you are. So actually in this project so all the sewage covers are also from the sister cities of Copenhagen. So this was the story with the wall. So, and maybe this object is important because it shows another strategy that we have been applying in this space, and we call that the aesthetic of conflicts. So usually we have been, when it comes to planning, to designing spaces in the cities, we have been learning that we have to try to avoid any kind of conflicts. And in that project we said, actually avoiding any kind of conflict creates a kind of a sad, hygienic space without any tensions, without any sex appeal, if you want, as well. So instead of, let's say, having the problem being solved and solving the problem, dissolving actually the qualities of the space, we try to use these problems as part of the solution of this space. So I say it's a little bit of a psychoanalytical approach. So instead of, when you go to your shrink, and you have a normal neurosis, if he doesn't give you medication, he will tell you, you have to learn to live with your problems. There is no real solution to them. You have to somehow get around them to make them work for you. Or even you could use them to, that's what I said, cultivating yourself, cultivating your character is actually cultivating your problems. Getting your problems to be part of the solution of them, or even a force to create something new. So one of the problems of the site was that some of the neighbors were complaining about noise, and so the usual thing would be that one would forbid noise. So instead of that, we actually did these loudspeakers. It's one of the objects we actually got from Jamaica. We went with the people, because I forgot to tell that, because the people were not really interested in collaborating and participating, we then started to offer some people that we would go to their country, we would pay the trip to get the objects they wanted to have back to Copenhagen. So one of these objects was this thing from Jamaica, and actually you can play your music with an app, with an iPhone app. You can play your music in these loudspeakers. Another object that works similar is the box ring. If people are fighting on bare ground, it's a dangerous situation. If they are fighting in a box ring, it's sports and it's fun to watch, especially if you are not involved. So in the end, it's playing. There is aggression in this neighborhood. So how to deal with this aggression? You can try to repress it or not show it, or you make actually the aggression the actual attraction of this neighborhood and have this kind of openness towards the problem. And it was interesting also, this object was proposed by a Thai boxing club that is around the corner. It was in a building, in a brick, very serious Danish brick building, and you would pass by and you would hear from inside like, and obviously all the Danes would think, oh, these foreigners are killing another again, no surprise, yeah. And so obviously we get more paranoid of things that we do not see, and when we get to see things, actually we feel maybe less threatened by them. And it's a good space is a space that has a good balance between being dangerous and being peaceful. So the best public space is one that somehow can balance that, and obviously in different neighborhoods that can be done in different ways. See, that's two Danes trying to be. So one of the areas is actually used to be the biggest drug dealing area of Copenhagen. So this was one of the problems here as well, and it was called the Sorte Market. This is the black market. So it was also kind of, instead of trying to get, because if you forbid to sell drugs in one area, drugs are going to be sold somewhere else. So in the end, space is not going to solve maybe this problem, but maybe if you create a new frame for the problem could be cultivated. In the best case, it could be solved through this cultivation, or at least reduced to a level of tolerance that is acceptable. So instead of saying that should be something else, we made the square actually black, so that it would be actually continuing the story from which it came from. One of the objects we put in is a typical playground from Japan. So this idea that something that in a place is something completely common, in another place can be special. And as we translated all the objects, this object being on the black square became then black. And also, thanks to global warming, we also have some palm trees that you will see here in the back. The fountain is from Morocco. This bench is from Germany. These objects, one of the objects that I proposed. It wasn't said, but I was born in Argentina. And you know, one of our hobbies is to burn meat, and so I did these barbecues. And actually, what is also important, you know, in many squares we see maybe these tables to play chess, but mostly they are put alone. So the idea is that also it's good if things in public space can have kind of different uses, and also to allow to do certain things in public spaces. We are quite reduced because we are so scared of security that we don't allow many things to happen in public space. But especially in this socially deprived area, people have small apartments, they have big families. So in the end, these kind of people are also those who actually need the public space, because the people who have big spaces, they don't need barbecues, they don't do that at home. So, but in the same time, this kind of use of the public space of different cultures can be incredibly attractive, especially to a place like Denmark. So to go there and to see how people behave in the public space and privatize the public space to a certain extent, but also become, as I said in the English Garden, become actors as much as users of the space. So they are as much part of the space as much as they are just consuming the space, so to speak. So that they become an attraction and users in the same time. And actually there's nothing more interesting than watching other people, I would say. Yeah? This object is from Palestine. There is a big, in the Scandinavian countries have a long tradition of taking many asylum seekers into their countries, and so there's a big Palestinian group, and they were very active, and they actually asked us if we could build one of these tunnels, you know, that go between Gaza and Egypt to get the rockets through, and we said, maybe dangerous idea. That might not work. So we had long discussions with them. The end of the discussion was that we actually went with one of them to Palestine and got the earth there. We went with these two ladies and we got the earth from Palestine and we flew it to Denmark. In Thailand we got the box ring. This is this movie. This is the story of the bull. In Spain, that also was one of the flying objects. This you can see in Jamaica, where we got the idea of the loudspeakers. So the point is that these issues also create a narrative around this project that give kind of a second level of importance and significance. Because the approach is so different. creating an identification out of the neighborhood that was important. So this is for me just interesting. I just would like you to see the girls speaking how independently of your origin, how the languages you most speak actually really change your physiognomy and your body language. I think that's interesting.
Altså før, alle de konflikter faktisk, der har lavet her, der dukker nogle billeder op, alle mulige billeder med, at to forskellige folk prøver at slås om et stykke jord.
Bare en smuk byer, ja. Det er godt smukt, det er også, der er rigtig mange bjerge og rigtig mange planter.
So that was Danish. So this is the two gods with the earth. So earth, obviously something, this idea of belonging to a place is very related with the earth, this idea of roots and so on. So something that for someone not knowing it is completely significant, for someone else has an important significance. So public spaces also are about this kind of, where is the significance for whom? And this is, for this kind of space, maybe as important as the design, the creation of this narrative. This is from Venezuela. This is the best part of this is the landscape of that guy here. Real nature. Here he's from front. So, but again, if you are working in a neighborhood where there is a lot of aggression, of necessity, of somehow being in another way, you can use that as part of the attraction also of the neighborhood. This is the idea for this project. This is a skate rink, and this is from Russia. This is another barbecue area in the back. There's the bull again. These are two poor Latin Americans, very sad, bad weather. This is a bus stop from Uzbekistan, and it's my second favorite object. And it's now in Copenhagen, and there is also a bus sign next to it. Obviously, there's never a bus stopping. The guy is waiting there already a while. So, but I was saying that before when I was talking to the students in the preparation meeting that we had, that the Scandinavians, Lars can tell you about that. If they want to be funny, they have to drink a lot. The more they drink, the more funny they get. Lars, isn't it like that?
I'm funny without.
I know, but that's true. No, that's true. But he's an exception. Yeah. So all the rest of them, they didn't go to Texas to live and stay in Scandinavia. They actually to relax because they are so highly functioning societies that the only way to avoid this sense of functionality is actually having alcohol. In America, it's similar, by the way. But however, the responsibility for the public space is actually to create this kind of relaxation, of humor maybe as well, where you can feel that you don't have, that you can be dysfunctional, that you can enjoy yourself without drinking, because drinking is not healthy. Okay? So in the end, it's a little more healthy approach to fun. Yeah? This is a typical situation of the neighborhood. Yeah, the Dane, first sunshine, she's half naked. Here you can see a already adopted terrorist. So he has a children's seat and drives bike. So he's half Danish already. Yeah. Here's the bus stop. Here you can see the setup. This is the Baltic Sea. In the back is the project. And as I was saying before, the narrative around the project and let's say the second life of the project becomes now more and more important, and this is something that we as designers can influence as much as the real life. So in the case of that project, because of the unique strategy, obviously got a lot of attraction and attention from media, and this attention of media obviously also was interesting for us as an office, as it brought us new work, but it was also very good for the neighborhood, as it suddenly brought people into the neighborhood that maybe wouldn't visit the site, this site being now the 10th most visited place in Copenhagen. So when they went to see the Mermaid and the Tivoli, on some point, they also now go to this neighborhood in which normally no tourists and no visitors would come. So that also makes the people now that live there feel proud about their place. So the place is as a unique place, also part of the official site of Denmark, of the state, of the city of Copenhagen. It has a Wikipedia site. It has over 5 million results when you Google it. So it created, and this is probably also one of the reasons that I invited here today, it created an enormous amount of attraction. This attraction, again, is part, and in some cases I would say that even the attraction could be even more relevant than the actual project itself. The ideal situation, obviously, is that the project itself is at least as good as the attraction or the results it creates. So it got 7 prizes, it got nominations. One of them is the Miss van der Rohe European Prize nomination, being the first landscape architecture project nominated for that. Exhibitions, publications. And the last thing is the Super Clean book that came out last year, in which you also can read about, because this was a project that we did in collaboration with BIC, that you're probably familiar with, is an architecture office in Copenhagen, and Superflex, who is an artist group. And the book is actually a collage of interviews. The editor of the book, Barbara Steiner, she did separate interviews with the 3 of us, and then she put them together again. So it's really interesting how actually she used the same approach we use for the square, of mixing, of redoing kind of a story. She actually also used for the book. So I think it's a very good book. So if you like to buy it, you should. Thank you very much. Questions? So if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Venturi.
Venturi, yeah, definitely. Very important. Venturi. Yeah.
This is the next generation.
That's true.
Yeah. And how is it different?
Okay, I think Venturi was for me probably one of the first theoretical books I read about architecture, about design. And I love the idea of symbolism and significance. Actually, after the modern movement, throwing away everything related to this kind of symbolic qualities, and finding that in a place that one wouldn't expect it, looking for beauty actually in the most ugly place would be Las Vegas. So this idea of playing with the issue of beauty and ugliness, with the dialectic of what is nice, what is significant, what is important, what should be glorified, what is something that is very unique in Venturi's work. What is different? I don't know if it's any different. Maybe it's almost it's a rococo Venturi. It's an exaggerated Venturi, because what he did himself in the end never was extreme enough. It was rather kitsch, I would say, with all respect, but it was architectonically never as interesting as what he wrote in his book. I would say. So.
You know, another thing that I found interesting, Colosseum in Rome has lots of different marble pieces. And I was there with one of the historians this summer. And it turns out that all those pieces of marble came from all over the empire. So those were from Algeria and places like that. So that this was a way for since it was a multicultural society, that this was a way to be connected to their homeland. And it was all the cladding on the Colosseum. So this idea of in a kind of quote-unquote global world in which you bring objects from your world with you, bring your layers with you, as Bachelard said, is in fact quite old. If Colosseum, if Colosseum is unique, I don't really know, but it certainly is there.
That's true. Yeah. Well, definitely. I think it's interesting how things can become something else. I think I was interested in that, how they can still what they are. So, for example, in the case of the half moon, the symbolism of Islam is still there, but nevertheless they are done in Denmark. They changed the scale, and they became also Danish as much as their form. And I think this kind of allowing things to be multi-layered and not having to decide what to be, being able to be several things at the same time, and how rich that actually can be, and how interesting and fruitful that can be. So but it is not new, definitely not.
I'm a landscape architect, so I know my art profession is better.
We are in minority, we have to be careful. They all have weapons here.
No, but our profession
Yes.
has been taken over by the green, sustainable, eco-foreign movement, right? And the most refreshing thing in your very refreshing project is that there's no rain garden. And the architects weren't compelled to put a green roof on it. I didn't see solar panels operating stuff. You didn't talk about zero scape.
No sun in Denmark.
What's that?
No sun in Denmark.
Yeah, I guess maybe it would work. But no, but I mean, it's a fantastic project. And it doesn't do any of the things that every student that sends a resume to me is being taught to do. It doesn't do all the things that in our professional magazines reach out and talk about. So I'm just curious, how did you get away with it?
It's one of the good coincidences where a lot of things work out very well. But well, my conviction is again that our profession should be taking care of social cultural issues, and we are not experts in environment or in sustainability. So it obviously depends on the project, but I was saying that today that in the end, because we are involved more and more in a culture of justification, which the justification can be more important than the actual quality of the project. Projects win competitions because they justify them as being green or sustainable or whatever. And we landscape architects lacking justification. We can't say we won't do stupid things and have fun. No one would do our projects. Yeah? Ours, besides some strange Scandinavians, having had too much alcohol. But anyone else, you have to sell the story of that it's so green and it's so sustainable and it's blah blah blah. And obviously this is all a big lie. And in very, very, very few cases really worth and truthful. So, but the profession jumped on that like because it's a big source of money as well. But in the end, it creates also this space. When I look at this kind of ecological project, it creates more of the autism, especially as in America. I mean, America is a quite autistic country. People live very much on their own. Yeah, and these projects create more of that kind of autism. And I don't think that this socially, you don't want to be alone in the landscape. And why? I mean, I should be meeting people and having fun. So that's what I think. It's not surprising.
It's hard for me not to have a parallel image as you're speaking, as you're presenting this, of a 19th century model of collecting. And I'm thinking of the Columbian Exposition, where people went out into the world and collected things and put them into a room. And it's hard for me not to imagine that you would want to distance yourself from those models in certain ways because of certain problems they present. They're curious, they're interesting, they're also pathetic and tragic, and etc. How would you differentiate what you're doing from that?
Well, one thing, there is a connection to that, because the English landscape parks were actually the parkway of these collectible spaces, where you would have like the temple from Greece, the tower, the little tower from Germany, whatever. You would collect trees from different places. You would have animals, the zoos, the botanical gardens were collections of that. So, and obviously the idea of colonization and empires is also behind that. They even would have people, they would bring people from certain areas and show them in these exhibitions as part of the attraction. So obviously this political connotation is rather negative. The big difference, so I would say, to what we did is that the things that we didn't bring them literally, because all the things are actually, again, and that's very crucial and important, are actually translated. So they are not just objects that we just translocated, but all these objects have been, not all of them, some of them we just bought and brought them, but let's say 80% of them are done in Denmark. So in the end they are not just mere foreign objects, but they are as much foreigners as they are part of the country in which they are. So what also counts nevertheless also when it comes to gardens, also for these gardens, because the tree that was brought from America in the end also became part of the landscape of England. Or the temple was done with English stone, so it was as much English as it was foreign. It was more English maybe than it was foreign. And the question of the tree as well, you brought in a smallest baby and then it became something big and even feeling better in England like the rhododendron now is going to be forbidden. You know, the most important, most beautiful plant of the English gardens, they want to forbid because it's spreading so well in England, it's loving the weather so much that it irradiates all the things. I don't know how to react to that. I think that there always been, and again, it's a tradition of guards, and maybe not only of guards, there always been an interest in different cultures and collecting objects from different cultures. I don't know if there is something negative about that. I don't know. I don't know if I answered your question really.
In your way.
Okay.
To mention that you study art history before, I was also wondering if you talked about how your references in terms of visual art, because of work, it is very graphic and visual. I think of PPLT and your influences in Berlin.
Yeah, no, PPLT, this is really cool reference. Well, as you said, I mean, my motivation to study landscape architecture was art. I came through art to landscape architecture. I studied first the history of gardens before I went to study landscape architecture. So, but I always felt that landscape architecture was a kind of an art too. You know, we are not really necessary, so it's like art. So it's good to have us, and but in the end, you also can live without us, and you should also be able to, let's say, afford it as a society, as an individual. It's not something that everyone can have, and that's very much related to art. And also art has a lot to do with looking for identities. The peak times of art was also when states, when societies needed new identities, where they commissioned more art. And if you look at Germany, for example, being a place with an identity crisis since the Second World War, and it's probably the place where most art is produced anywhere in the world. You know, it has to do also with that fact. So for me, there is no. So and in that sense, I would say landscape architecture and art are very, for me, very related and more related than maybe art and architecture in that respect. So that's how I would see that. And the other thing is also because we have been, you know, our profession is also a little bit lost. I mean, he was talking about this idea of sustainability. The profession is also a little bit not really emancipated. You know, we are like women in the 50s. You know, we wear like skirts over our knees, and we sit and wait till the architects ask us to dance. You know? So we are not really proactive, and I always hated that, and I always felt also the necessity to be seen and to appear in space and to take certain risks that architects almost naturally take, constantly take. What is really disgusting. They should be learning from us, you know. But we should be learning from them.
Do you think landscape urbanism is a part of this reconstruction of the profession as a relevant subject? Because I mean, in the sense that it stole urbanism from architecture.
It's true.
And made this platform, which is the landscape in which the city would sit. That is also beginning to change.
That's beginning to change. Well, yeah, that's the problem because the profession is so. I mean, when architects, you know, you never have to think about your identity because you are really quite clear. You do buildings, you know, so very simple, different, big, small, round, nice, ugly, whatever.
Coffee caps.
Coffee. What is it? Coffee?
Coffee caps.
As well, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know that. So that's really
Alessi.
Alessi, that's true. And chairs. Yeah. No, but mainly buildings. And in our case, the idea that we do gardens isn't for us, seems not to be enough. That we just do open spaces doesn't seem to satisfy us. So we're always looking for something else that gets us to be more important, more relevant, because we couldn't convince, you know. We also, one has to say one thing, we also lost our, like art, we also lost the genius that they take, the genius king would be the best client ever, you know, the educated despot would be the best client. Well, that's what the clients that we had when the big gardens appeared. So as these clients disappeared, and now we have the impression that we have to force our clients to like what we do. You know, obviously we are in a conflict. And you, as a professional, I would say, you still have more of these despots, stupids around to build your own stuff. But in our case, the guys are gone with this kind of power and size, you know. And us are maybe not educated enough to have that. So we have mostly the public, the general public, as our client. Yeah. And it's like you all of you would have this experience. You know, when you get the wrong gift, it's just exactly telling you that you are stupid, or the person giving you doesn't know anything about you. That's what happens with landscape architecture. We produce a lot of stuff that we know better, kind of space. You know, people hate it. And it's also not really interesting design-wise, but we have to justify it, and because we are educating someone or whatever, you know. And this also creates this kind of necessity of more justification. And it's a big disease. But I think it's again, as we don't have this kind of clients, it's hard for us to be as selfish as a professional as maybe the architects. Also, we have to look for other things that make people think that we are relevant, like sustainability and all that. When it comes to landscape urbanism, I think one has to clarify two things nevertheless. In Germany, for example, the first urban designer was Peter Joseph Lené, who is at the same time the founder of the profession, who was a landscape architect. So he did set up the canals for Berlin. The canals actually were made to transport the material to the city. So out of the canals, the city started to grow in the 19th century. Okay, so in the end, there has been also landscape architects being first, and people thinking that landscape architects could have a wider sense of space than architects, but architects are more kind of focusing on the object. So so there is something about urbanism that's important. But this is again is jumping on another train that is actually not what we should be focusing on, creating interesting open spaces, and that should be enough for us. And we are also, the problem is that we are also not putting enough effort into these good spaces that are interesting and people love them. You know, we just do this kind of insecure stuff. So, but nevertheless, again, it's not about who does what. I don't care as if architects get into open spaces, or we do architecture, or we do urban design, or whatever. I don't think that this is not the problem. But we should nevertheless be focusing on certain issues too. And I'm teaching at Harvard, and I was saying that my students have been mapping for the last 10 years, doing some maps or some mind maps or some stuff that they don't know. I'm doing a park with them now, and they have difficulties to design it, to think of forms, to think in form. Something that I would say is the most simple, or not the most simple, the most difficult thing, but the thing that you have to learn is to think in form. Just thinking is not enough. Thinking in picture is not enough. Thinking in line is not enough. You have to think in form. They don't know how to do that. And they are already graduating almost. You know, and then, I don't want to sound too negative. Oh, sorry. But whining. Whining is such a difficult thing of our profession.
Your project was a lot about thinking in symbols.
Yeah, it was.
I would say more than, or maybe you highlighted that in your presentation, because I didn't see the concern for form. It was there. It seems to be overshadowed by the symbols and the limitations, I guess, of the symbols.
No, you're right. That's true. I mean, this project is really, in that respect, rather superficial. I think the simplicity has also to do with I think the simplicity of communication and the positiveness of the simplicity was for us more important than maybe other issues. But there are a lot of form-related issues of significance. All the ideas of third and second dimension, how the whole square jumps out on the facade, we worked a lot on that. For example, if you saw the white lines on the black surface, the idea of third and second dimension again, the idea that it's like highlights, like height lines that actually give you the sensation that the space starts to grow because you get a kind of effect impression. So there are a lot of formal issues of significance. I didn't highlight that maybe as well. And it wasn't so much about that in the book.
Yes, it seems the opportunity, it's hard to tell in your presentation because focus on the symbols, that the form would have a significant role in contextualizing those symbols, right? That as opposed to just reproducing them and maybe making them cleaner because they were built, they're new. That what you bring to the table is not only taking the symbol, putting it out in a new place, but recontextualizing it. Right? I mean, otherwise it's like the Swiss minarets. It's the same problem with walking down something, and you're just saying, in your face, here's the minaret. But I think what's interesting about it is that obviously you've recontextualized the symbols, but I'm wondering if there was, if you wouldn't, maybe you did. I mean, recontextualize those symbols and make them something besides just a reproduction?
Well, we played with this issue of simplicity, okay? It's not an accident and we wanted something else. So we played with this on that superficiality that was part of it. The readability and the simplicity of it was more important than the formulation. Nevertheless, it's a very formal project. So the idea of form is not only an empty box, I would say. The question would be what you understand what form would be. And maybe I have to explain, but I think an object that went through a process of translation and being reproduced is quite a formal decision. It also implies formal thinking because we have to think of a certain size, we have to think of certain materials, we have to see how we translate certain things. And we play with the idea that when you translate, you always get misunderstandings, but these misunderstandings can be actually very interesting because these misunderstandings show as much of the new culture as of the old. Okay? And the idea of recontextualizing, maybe the most clear is with the box screen. The idea that you recontextualize not on the object, but action. So the aggression is in the neighborhood anyway. Instead of trying to get rid of it because you do a granite square, a beautiful form, whatever, a mountain, I don't know what I'm saying, for form. You recontextualize not only the object, but you recontextualize the social conflicts that are there, creating what I call aesthetic of conflicts. When conflicts get aesthetical, we all know that conflicts are aesthetical, war is also aesthetical. So the question is, how can you dose these things? And again, they work, in regard to form, I think they work maybe more, instead of being formal exercises, or representative formal exercises, maybe like the Pantheon would be, that would just represent a certain power, a purity, whatever. They actually represent a certain weakness. Because we didn't want to do, I don't think that this project is something for a current period. It's also something about this moment in the development of this neighborhood and this space. So it is thinking of form, but regarding the concept that we have, the one answer, and it's one concept. It's not a recipe that you can now. But this was the symbolism was more important. The rhetoric was more important. Then I don't know who else.
It's interesting that boxing is not a symbol.
Yeah, exactly.
That is a bit that kind of stands out.
Yeah, it's true. Well, on the loudspeakers. So it's also not a symbol. It's also how to interact, how do we understand public space? What do we allow in public space? And how this public space can almost work as a vaccination for bigger conflicts. And if you don't have this kind of conflictive spaces, when it comes to the bigger conflicts, you don't know how to affront them, and you just get nervous and use too much aggression. And that's like when you get an allergy, because you're always confronted with so much hygienic context, you never get to eat dirt. So the first dirt you see, you die. So in societies work similar.
Just like that. I guess it's a kind of, I keep thinking of the Swiss minarets, and the way that you pull symbols in is a way, maybe what the value is you would keep that conflict from coming by taking that minaret and bringing it into the city and doing something with it, recontextualizing it before it becomes this hot button issue that's exploited by the right wing.
That's it. That's it. In the end, it's again, emancipation happens always. If there are classes in societies that are oppressed, they will on some point expel. Slowly or bigger. We had the rise, big rise in values in France, rise in London. We had in places you would expect it being incredibly international. We had rise in Americans and tourists. We have these kind of outcomes, and these places it's a little thing, but it's just within our strategy to do spaces, because we always seem to have the idea that we have to create order. Okay? And in that case, a little bit of disorder is maybe more healthy in the long run than just trying to make it nice and beautiful form and it appears everything is okay, but it's not everything okay. And if you see it's a way, as I said, cultivating conflicts is something more cultivated.
You know, it's a kind of domestication of forms. And if you think of that as a kind of new landscape, and maybe if those symbols and sticks could be more like landscape ornaments, or seen more as landscape ornaments, maybe they can help in making it more spatial and more coherent rather than symbol landscape. That they can be brought together. I don't know how one will do this, but it seems to me that what you had is in the sense is a kind of English garden, but now with symbols like the temple is now with a half moon on it, and they become elements in the vocabulary making that space. So it can then become very spatial because they look at it in such a way that they create this landscape. And I don't know if that's already there or that would be an opportunity.
Well, it worked in the black square, it worked better than in the red square. And one issue is, of course, we planted over 100 trees, and they're small. So at some point, I think they grew as an entrance, and the park is obviously the trees. So the question is if the object will still be there, the trees are big, I don't know about that. But it wasn't for us, we were not looking for that. We were looking for a certain independence of the object, nevertheless. So this idea of the coherence wasn't for us important. So as I said before, I think faking is okay as far as you do it openly. So if you start to do it if you start to lie, a coherence that is not there, then it would feel wrong. And that's what I would say what we are doing strategically, using the things of the ancient artists, trying to get things to glue things together that people are not wanting to. So
how would you reply to the critique that you're training the new immigrants to be English gentlemen? Through our partners is scoping.
Yeah, we are. So is it an English gentleman something very negative?
Well, replaying, seeing colonialist agendas.
No, I think that immigration is only interesting in the end if something new is created. Otherwise, a mere addition. Immigration is only interesting if you're an English gentleman with a turban on your head, and the best Indian restaurant in London.
So if you accessorize it.
Yeah, I'm not accessorized on it, but you are culturally different. I mean, one example maybe might appeal to you, and to which I also personally related Judaism, for example. It's a very long, the oldest of the three monotheistic religions. It didn't have a state for many years, and it could be there were German Jews that fought in the First World War. They had a synagogue guy, rabbi going with them to the front. They would kill the French Jews without any problem. So it still would feel Jewish. So you can be different things, and you can feel having different identities altogether. So you can be a Jewish English gentleman. And these figures I'm interested in. How can you not having to decide actually what you are, but using the best of the different things that you have? So it's helping them to us become this new thing, this really new thing. People that speak Danish but still are Muslims, and they can become this kind of mix of these two actually incredibly separate different things. Okay? Then you multiply. I think creating hybrids, you multiply possibilities. The other way would be this kind of politically correct way, that might also more the texting way, is to just have every minority just sitting next to another giant. Okay? And this is additive. It creates a certain addition, so you have more. So 3 + 3 is 6, but 3 times 3 is 9. Okay? So this is additive maybe idea. But it's what we are doing. We are trying to make an English language.
So part of the Texan solution is going to be including this discussion, continuing this discussion tomorrow with food. So at lunchtime we have a response by Christopher Haidt to Martin's talk and a roundtable. So at noon in the jury room. Thank you very much.
Thank you.